Welcome everyone. You're in the right place to see what's new in the AEC Industry Collection with your presenter, Vince Daniele. Vince, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jana. Welcome everyone to today's presentation. So this is part of our What's New series, and I'm going to highlight some key features in the AEC collection. Now, a lot of this stuff, if you're familiar with what's new and some of the programs that are part of the AEC collection, we did a Revit What's New a month ago. A lot of this stuff is kind of program features, but the main part that I wanted to touch on in this presentation was the interoperability and the key features, some of the new things that have been added to the collection to really help you with your BIM workflows. So I started with this, just a quick explanation for those of you who don't know what the AEC collection is. So Autodesk is moving from the building design suites and going into a more comprehensive set of programs in these collections. And the collections themselves, the idea is that the collection would provide you with access to a lot of integrated tools and equip you to meet any type of project challenge in any types of projects, whether it's something that involves a large site, if it's an architectural design, if it's fabrication. This package, this new collection, really has everything in it. So whether you're trying to get visualization, building design, site design, infrastructure, it's all there. And these are kind of, well, in my opinion, main 5 programs that are included in the collection. So we've got Revit, Civil 3D, AutoCAD, Navisworks Manage, and 3ds Max. But all in all, there are 26 applications included in the AEC collection. So they give you pretty much everything but the kitchen sink there. I'm only going to highlight in this demonstration ones that I feel like are really focused on BIM workflow, using Revit as a centerpiece, but just some of the things I wanted to mention here. I'm going to back up one slide just to let that soak in and show you everything that's included in that AEC collection. So we do have Revit, like I said, AutoCAD, Civil 3D, Navisworks, but there are a lot of these other programs that can kind of piggyback onto those larger platforms. You get all of the AutoCAD vertical, so AutoCAD Architecture, Electrical, MEP, AutoCAD Plant 3D. For Plant 3D, you might notice that there is no P&ID on this list. They've just integrated the P&ID software into Plant 3D, so that's already integrated into Plant for those of you that are using Plant 3D. But other ones, they might be smaller programs like Format Pro, Recap for registering point clouds and doing some configuration of point clouds. But you can see here, there's just a lot of stuff in AEC collection. So what I want to focus on today is the integrated or some of the integrated workflows that the AEC collection provides. I'll talk about the added benefits for some of the analysis tools like Insight, some of the structural stuff as well, and cover how there are more options for visualizations, including VR immersion without having to really be a whiz at 3ds Max or, well, formerly Stingray and now 3ds Interactive. There are ways we can get into high-end visualizations or pretty good immersive visualizations without having to do too much. I just like this image. This is a connected BIM image that Autodesk has used in the past in different slides, but I just like to use this as sort of, why do we have to have this collection? You know, well, even if you are just dealing with one piece of a design process or in the building process, you have to keep in mind that with BIM workflows and connected BIM, we have all of these other disciplines that are using these models in different ways, and we can really utilize technology that's available to us to keep this process integrated, even if it's not all in-house. So if your consultants are using collections or if they have standalone licenses of these other programs, you still have the ability to generate file formats and file types that they can use and benefit from, even if they don't have, the full suite of projects or the full, I should say, collection of products. So anywhere from the conceptual design for optimizing your building design, which we can do through using Format, Revit, Insight, other energy analysis. We can provide simulation on our conceptual designs, get into AR or VR pretty quickly, and then throughout that process, obviously can create our construction documents, push things out to programs like Navisworks for clash detection, or use point cloud scans, use Recap to register those scans, bring them into to Revit as point cloud data, and compare design to built environment. So all types of different stuff. And also we can integrate fabrication processes into our BIM models, or from our BIM models. BIM model, that's kind of redundant there, but building information model. Okay, so anyway, what's new? Really the key features are we have a lot more cloud capabilities. So structural analysis for Revit, this has been around for a little bit, but it is a key feature for having subscription and having the collection. Energy analysis using Insight, improvements to cloud rendering using the new physical materials that they've integrated into Revit 2019, and just a few different add-ins that I'm going to focus on today. Format, Revit Live, Insight. I will point out some key extensions and how you get access to those extensions and add-ins through your Autodesk management portal. Okay. Yeah, so this slide here, I just wanted to, is kind of just general information for everyone that has access to manage their software, whether you are in IT or if you have admin rights to get to your account management page. So through your Autodesk account, you can access all of these different programs to download, and within the account management, at the bottom of each of the programs list, there is a button there for updates and add-ons. A lot of people kind of miss this, and I really recommend if you're creating deployments or if you're planning on including some of these add-ins or extensions, take a look at what updates are available and which add-ins you want to include in your deployments before you push the software out to the entire company. I've worked with a lot of customers that they don't even realize that they have access to some of these add-ins and extensions, and they've already created their deployments, and then they need to come back and create a new deployment and roll that out to the entire project teams. So it's just a lot of extra work having people uninstall the programs or having to go around to each individual if you're in a smaller office and install some of these add-ins one at a time. So through your Autodesk account, you just click on updates and add-ons, and you can see that it opens up another dialog box and shows you all of the available add-ons or add-ins and extensions. I'll point out some of these. If you install the main program, for example, with Revit and Revit Live, once you install Revit Live, it automatically creates the add-in inside of Revit. So once the installation is done, it's there. Some of these other ones, like Advanced Steel extensions for Revit, you actually have to download the extension in order for it to show as a button to send your models out to Advanced Steel. So you just have to kind of be cognizant of how that's going to work. I don't know why it's not consistent between every program, but there are some that will automatically show up, some of them that you have to go to your portal and download. Okay. All right. So that's really about it for my slides. I want to go into and spend some time. I've got a lot of programs open. I've closed some of them down, so hopefully they don't take too long to launch up. But I really just want to show some of the key features from the AEC collections using Revit as a centerpiece, but I'll open up some of the other programs and show you how everything can kind of integrate into a nice, comprehensive workflow when you have access to all of these different programs, plus all of the extensions and add-ons that help you to work between one program to the next. All right. No, of course I closed Revit down. Oh, no, good. Okay, so some of you have probably seen this model before. This is just one of them that comes with Revit out of the box. So this is the Advanced Architecture project file. I like to use this one. It's a pretty light data set, but it's got enough in here that we can create some visualizations and understand the model. It's got a site surrounding the building too. All right, so starting off with some of these add-ins and extensions. Once you have your project open, it's kind of interesting. There is an add-ins tab in Revit, and in this add-ins tab, you can see that I've got several different buttons and panels included in the add-ins tab. The first one being external tools. So this one, these add-ins get installed once you've, actually the InfraWorks one is an extension, but the Navisworks one automatically installs once you install Navisworks. I think there's a checkbox to include the ribbon add-ins when you install Navis. But the InfraWorks one is one of those through the account management, your Autodesk account that you have to download and install separately. But the external tools, Navisworks, if we want to export our model out to an NWC, a Navisworks cache file, you can do that right from this button. I'll go into the programs, but some of these other ones, these were extensions or part of the Revit extensions in the past. They just come integrated with Revit 2019. Things like batch print, your e-transmit, some of the model review stuff. Revit DB link. So for those of you who didn't know, Revit does have its own, or Autodesk has released a Revit database link in the program. So we've got our Imagine It database link. We've got Ideate now that has their own BIM link to Excel, but this is a feature now in the add-ins that we can access directly through Revit. So these should come stock with the program now. Same with Work Sharing Monitor. So they're kind of, I think they took the major add-ins that people use in the program and they integrated them into your standard download. The other ones that you'll see here, Advanced Steel extension. This is how we get the Revit model. We export it out to Advanced Steel to get that into, well, it's not technically a CAD format. Let's see, it's like an let's see, Advanced Export. Can't remember offhand the exact file extension, but this exports your 3D objects so that you can open them in Advanced Steel and do some of your detailing or advanced connections using Advanced Steel. So right out of Revit, we can export to Advanced Steel using that extension. Again, that one is downloaded directly from your Autodesk account. This other one, Import Format. This is one I'm going to highlight in my demonstration. A lot of people that are still using SketchUp for your conceptual design work. A few years ago, Autodesk came out with a solution to compete with SketchUp, and that is called Format. And with Format, the great thing about it, even though it might not have as much development or as much of a tool set as SketchUp, it's very similar. And the great thing about Format is that it has interoperability inside of Revit. So it actually, we can convert Format models, which I'll show you, into Revit families, and we can export Revit families back into Format. So it's a really good file exchange between the two programs as you're doing conceptual modeling and stuff. If you want to export any of your Revit families into a conceptual environment, you can export them right into Format. So talk about that. And I've just got this one here. For those of you that don't know, I'll just mention this. Screencast is a video recording or screen recording service that Autodesk has. It's free, so anyone can download it. And actually, with all of your Autodesk programs, it will install an add-in if you want into the program directly. So if I wanted to record my screen, I just launch Screencast, record this. It does store the recordings on the cloud. So I'm pretty sure, I don't want to say 100%, but I believe that once you create the videos, that you can't really pull them down from the cloud. You can share them out to groups of people, but you can't save them down as like an AVI or a movie, a .mov or anything like that. But one other thing about Screencast, and I use this quite a bit for doing quick demos, or if you're a BIM manager at your company and you just want to create a quick, how-to video, it records all of your commands. If you're typing in anything on the keyboard or clicking the mouse, it automatically records those functions, and when someone watches the video, they can see what you're typing in without you having to say, okay, now I'm typing in L for line, enter. It just kind of creates a subtitle if you want it to. So kind of a cool thing for those of you that don't know. And even though it's not part of the AEC collection, it's add in Screencast. There's a good notification. But it's just it's a nice tool and utility that some people don't know about that you might be able to utilize. Okay, so all right, the Revit project here. A couple of other places where the add-ins don't just automatically get installed to the add-ins ribbon here. If you have access to Insight, which you will have if you have the AEC collection, if you're doing any type of energy modeling, or if you want to do energy analysis on your Revit model or conceptual massing, through the Analyze tab, over under Energy Optimization, there is a button here to generate analysis using Insight, which is a cloud service that runs in the background, so it's not going to tie up your computer, but it does quite a bit using the materials and the surfaces of your model based on the models, the energy models that you generate within Revit, and it kicks out a pretty comprehensive, pretty good analysis, and I have this one set up. So just to show you here, I don't want to click the button and wait for an hour for it to generate, but once you run the analysis on your project, whether it is conceptual or if you're actually using model elements, traditionally how we would create our energy models in Revit, we can choose conceptual massing or physical, the physical objects that we model in the project. You can run the analysis and create this little Insight hub where you can do model comparisons. So I've got a few of them in here. This is the one on the project that I have open right now. But it just gives you some really good information based on some standards for construction and how, if you change the types of windows from maybe a 2-pane glass to a low E 2-pane glass, how is that going to affect your cost? I changed my units here to square feet, so it's giving us an estimate cost per square foot per year, and you can see here we can navigate around the model. This is just a web viewer, so anyone can open this website. If you give them access, they can view the energy model, navigate around it. You can see how it does the surfacing for glazing and walls, any of your planar surfaces like roof and floors. And down here, we've got benchmarks. This is based on, they've got a couple of different criteria, energy benchmarks, so the ASHRAE 90.1 standard, or the Architecture 2030, which is actually the company I think that runs this kind of background analysis. But just based on things like your building orientation, it will tell you how to optimize the direction of the building for energy. You can see here that it also has a lot of stuff we want to calculate to see if we have some window shades. How is that going to affect our overall cost per square foot per year if we start to increase or decrease things like oops, there we go, clicked on it, brings open this other thing. We can move this slider, change the window shade to 3/4 of the size of the window rather than 2/3 of the window height, and you can see how that automatically starts to adjust the energy cost just based on that little sunshades on the south side of the building. So just in conceptual design, when we're trying to figure out optimal conditions for our buildings, this is a really, really nice feature that we can use to calculate and to help us with our design, so wall construction and different things. And like I said, this is all done through the cloud. If you have the AEC collection, you have access to the Insight program, which can run all of this and give you this nice energy modeling, kind of estimating for different parts of the building. Okay. All right. Next up, I wanted to go over just a quick export to Navis. So if you are running the add-in, and a lot of other programs too will have the same external tools. So if you are creating your designs in AutoCAD, you have a button there to export out to Navisworks 2019. So same sort of add-in. I think it actually looks a little bit different in AutoCAD. It has the big green N for Navisworks, which they changed to a blue N this year. Not sure why, I'm familiar with the green one, but exporting out to Navis 2019 NWC file. I've already pre-baked and done this one, so instead of exporting this out, which is actually pretty quick, let me go ahead and do it anyway. Let's name it something different. So just to show you, it's pretty quick. It creates a model cache, so all of your 3D surfaces and all that BIM information gets transported into that NWC. You can see here it's working. It's a little bit slower than it was earlier, probably because I have the WebEx running and a lot of other background stuff. I better let that finish before I show anything. So yeah, that's been around for a long time, but remember, just kind of relate back to the building design suites. That's a feature of having the building design suite. So if you have Navisworks and Revit and install the programs, you have access to this plugin. So without, the collection, you'd have to run standalone licenses. Geez, there's all types of stuff running here. Close that out. Just got my dual monitor just so I can dump everything else onto the other screen here. All right. So it's really hard to demo the collection because, as most of you probably know, when you have a lot of these programs running at the same time, it really starts to tie up the resources on your computer, especially when you're processing things like the Navisworks model. I think I have Format open at the same time here. So, all right. All right, I already have this recent. So once I imported in the NWC, I did do a couple of things just to clean up the grid lines and turn the plans off. Saved it out as NWF, and you can see here that right from Revit, didn't have to do anything other than click the button to get that model into Navisworks. Sure, coordinating and making sure your origins and stuff line up from other programs can be a bit much, or a little added difficulty to coordinating the models, but from going from one program to another, right from Revit into Navisworks, this is a pretty nice utility. Just a click of a button. It does separate out everything based on Revit categories. So if we want to isolate any selections, I turned all my plant materials off earlier just by going through the selection tree and hiding them. So quick, easy workflows. All right, now we've got, so I wanted to show how the format utilities work too. I think this is one that can really benefit people on the front end of the design. You can use this in combination with Insight as well. So if we create a format model from scratch, import it into a Revit conceptual mass, then bring that into your project, apply some materials if you need to in Revit. Although the materials do come through from format into Revit, so if you wanted to, you could apply all of your materials directly in format, bring that into a Revit environment and run Insight. You don't even have to do any modeling in the conceptual mass environment inside of Revit. So just to show everyone that's not familiar with format, even though it's been out for a few years now, it's a very sketch-based massing tool. So just using normal lines, so for those of you that are using SketchUp, this stuff probably looks pretty familiar to you. Draw a surface. Trying to go too fast. Select the surface, push pull to create massing. Now the reason I set this up as separate components, I wanted to show you how this imports into Revit. So we can create our massing. You can create materials and assign your materials to the faces in format. Oh, that one's not something about this one's not assigning. But you can apply materials in here. Oh, that's what I was looking for earlier. Okay. But assigning the materials in format, this stuff's really simple, push-pull type of modeling. So when you draw on your surfaces, gosh, my selections are, it's probably just me trying to go too fast in my computer, having a hard time, but your push-pulls work. You can select surface, right-click, it gives you a little nice heads-up display. So if I want to offset surfacing, just need to hit the space bar. You can start to model this stuff up. And then right from format, there's not a quick button here, but it is in the file drop-down, file menu drop-down. We can export this out locally as an AXM file, which is actually the native, it's a native format file. So actually, I think I can just do a save as. Save sketch as, save it locally. This is one I've updated here, so I'll just get to the desktop. And then right from there, inside of Revit, let's go to a new conceptual mass. I could do this right at the project level. I just prefer, if I'm applying any different materials or anything, I like to have everything kind of packaged into one family file. But you can bring that massing right in and it kind of sees it. I think it actually does make it an RFA file, but you have a little bit more tools to use once it's in a conceptual mass. And the reason I want to show it in the conceptual massing environment, when you bring the format model in, is how does it bring in those separate masses? Right? I had 3 separate masses in format. 2, 3. So how's that going to work? Well, with that plugin, so the add-in still shows up even though we're in the conceptual mass environment. If I import format to Revit, the massing will come in, and this is massing that Revit recognizes, so it does use the Revit rules to create these objects. You can see that it brings them all in as a separate family. If I click on one of these and go to Edit Family, it brings you up to another level of conceptual massing in which you can then edit that individual object. So If you bring it into the project level, it still does create each one of those as a separate RFA, but if we bring it into a conceptual mass mode, basically those separate components are just nested families within the conceptual massing. So it's really up to you how you want to do this. One thing you will notice though is once this is brought in, we are not able to do any type of like push-pull or anything to the mass. So you would have to go back to form it to edit it, to update it, so you could reload over it, to update your massing. But any of the materials, if you're doing an update and reload, if you applied any materials to this family while you're in Revit and you do a reload, you need to reassign them. So it would make more sense to apply all of the materials that you need directly in Format to bring that in. Something's happening there. I don't know why this is not. Let's just try. There we go. I just have to. I'm really bad with the order of clicking in Format. So if I select the face and then select the material, it assigns the material to that face. So I should have done that before I imported it in. But you can apply the same Autodesk materials to your Format objects, load them in, Revit reads them with all the same values, like thermal properties, physical properties, so they are the same materials. So just as a best practice, it's probably better to assign the materials. If you're doing your conceptual modeling in Format, it's better to assign the materials in Format so that if you do change the model, that you don't have to break those materials or reassign all of them. We close. Well, keep this open. Okay. So, close that. I'll load this into the project I have open now. But this will come in as 3D view. Place it. It will come in as a conceptual mass family in your 3D views, or in your Revit model. And then you can use these to start to apply normal building materials. So there isn't a throwaway. So I placed that, the UCS flipped on it, or the work plane flipped. Should have placed it in plan view. There we go. Spacebar action should take care of it. No, maybe not. But apply wall to face, we can slap actual Revit components onto the massing. And because it is a conceptual mass, if you update the mass in the mass family and you're using any of your massing tools like curtain systems, walls, roofs, floors, if the mass updates, you can automatically update those components to match the conceptual massing. So unlike SketchUp where you create this throwaway sort of model, it's really great using this, even though, like I said, the tools might not be as fluid at this point in Format as they are in SketchUp, or if you're really used to using SketchUp and doing rendering and stuff out of SketchUp. Yeah, you're probably not going to get the same render quality out of this because it doesn't have a V-Ray plugin, but it's a really nice alternative if you're just doing your conceptual design work in this program to get it into Revit without having to do all of that work and rework and start from scratch once you get to that model level or the project level in Revit. And one other thing that's cool too, I'm not going to convert them over. I think I've spent enough time here in Format, but there is levels. Which button is it here? Yeah, the component button. There are a few Revit components that you're probably familiar with seeing that are in the standard library, but you can bring these in. If you're just doing layouts and stuff, you can bring these right into Format. And these technically aren't RFA files. They're the format AXM format, but you can create or convert your Revit families. Tree might not be the best example. Third floor. So if I've got something in the Revit model like a lamp here, and I want to convert this to a format native file using that same add-in, just expanding the options, we can convert the RFA to format. So actually have to browse and pick it directly from here or wherever I have this saved out, I think, to create it as format content, and then it will show up in this format box here. Got samples in that samples folder. So you can create your own custom libraries per project, have that stuff loaded in, drop it into your massing. So if you wanted to, if you have stock shapes or stock furniture or equipment that you want to place in conceptual modeling, you could set up libraries and just have that stuff ready to go right in format. Close this out. All right. So a couple of the other cloud things I wanted to talk about. A lot of us, we like to see good visualizations. We like to see the pretty picture of our models, but you might not have the wherewithal or the knowledge to create those high-end visualizations, or maybe it's just you want to create something quick, but you don't have the computer resources to sit there and wait for a rendering. Through the cloud offerings, in the Revit model, we've got the View tab, and if I go navigate to one of my 3D views, front entry, if I navigate to a 3D view, sure, I could render this out directly in Revit on my computer. I can tell you that it probably won't look that great. I haven't done too much with the materials or the lighting in here, but I could render this using ray trace or using, they're both ray trace. So I could use the ray trace visual style or render it out using the teapot. I knew that was going to happen. Why did I click that? But you can render out the scene. Or, well, this is grayed out. Okay, good. Let's just cancel that. Really dark. Or from the View tab, you have the option here to render in the cloud. So when you're on subscription, you have the option here to render in the cloud. Rendering in the cloud, we get to choose a few different things. Now, depending on how advanced the rendering that you're doing is based on these properties that you choose, this can cost some credits. But also, if you're just doing draft renderings or just smaller images that you want to put in a PowerPoint or send out to the owner, the client, if I keep this to a still image, standard quality, I can even kick it up to a large format. It's only going to require one, or if I just keep this on medium, this is much better than a draft rendering that you're going to get directly out of Revit, and it doesn't cost anything. So you have this service available to you. You can render that out. It sends it to the cloud, so you'll see a little circle by my name start spinning here. Once that gets going, I actually pre-rendered a lot of these different views from this model as well. So I just want to show you here. This is that outside rendering of the building. Yeah, the lighting might be a little warm, and we don't have too much control over that. You could always do it in post. If you save this out as a PNG, once it downloads to the cloud or renders to the cloud, you are able to download these. So just clicking your download button, download that image as a PNG, open it up in Photoshop, do some color correction, maybe make the grass look a little bit better. But you have the ability to download and edit these. Another great feature, and I'd like to show this to people that ask about getting into VR, and they have a lot of questions about what do we need to get to VR? What type of headset do we need? What type of computer do we need? Does Revit Live provide that for you? And the answer is, yeah, sure, it can do a lot of these things. We have the ability to get to VR, and I'll show you Revit Live after this. But one of the simple ways to get into an immersive space or an immersive environment is when you render in the cloud, there's an option. So before I had output type set to still image, you can set this to a panorama or even a stereo panorama, which if you've never seen it, Google Cardboard or any of those little viewfinders with the dual lenses, if you download this type of stereo panorama on your phone, you can put your phone into a Google Cardboard or one of these little viewfinders, and it's like you're standing in the space. Sure, you're static, you're standing in one spot from where you place the camera in Revit, but it really is immersive. You're in that environment just by kicking out a stereo panorama to the cloud. I pre-populated just some normal panoramas, or one to show you this, how it looks. So, oh, is it still going? This one should be good. So this is just the, sometimes it's fuzzy until it actually downloads all the way. But this is an example of how we can create a quick, nice, immersive rendering at a point in the building without having to, there it goes, it's a little bit more clear now, without having to spend an arm and a leg on a VR headset and dishing a lot of money out on the best computer that you can buy. So, it's an option. You can create cameras in all different spots in your building. Now, I will say that this actually does, if you are using this, if I kick out to a stereo panorama, final quality rendering, the width just affects the clarity of the image. So the more pixels, obviously, the more clear the image is going to be. Even at a 1024, though, it only requires 3 credits. And you could generally assume that a credit is $1. So they're about $1. You could buy them in packages. With the collection, I believe you still get a block of 100 cloud credits per subscription. So you have a lot of those to test this stuff out with. But once you run out, you can buy blocks of cloud credits, and I'm pretty sure they're still $1 a piece, $1 per unit. So 3 credits, $3 to render something out, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars on headsets that are tethered to a computer. You can't move around. You can't, it's not very mobile. You've got to bring a bunch of hardware with you to a client site if you're trying to show them something. But this is a good, quick solution to kind of getting owners or whoever, stakeholders in the project, into that environment without doing too much. So kick that out to stereo, let that run in the background. Cloud produces it. I also like to show that once it is rendered, so I just rendered this one out as a normal panorama, but there is a button here to create it as a stereo panorama. It just does a re-rendering of the scene, so you'd have to choose your options here, but you can have them in several different formats. You can even download these or share them out. So if I share this via link, watch what happens here. It generates a QR code. So for those of you that are watching the presentation, if you hold your phone, I think you have to have, I don't know what Android version, but if you have like iOS 9 or newer, and you just use your camera and point it at the QR code, it will open you up to this, or it'll open it up right to this HTML, and you can move your camera around and look in this rendering. So pretty cool. You can just email that out to someone, have them look around. This would be great too if you wanted to show any types of clashes that you're catching in Revit. You could make the turn the ceiling off, look and see what's happening with all of your equipment, all of your ductwork and pipe, and show clashes right in this simple space. Then one last thing I want to just demonstrate here. This is all part of the collection. once you install Revit Live, this used to be a pay-to-play service, so you had to pay a per-month fee to have Revit Live. Now it's just integrated as a program in the collection, so a huge benefit to having this in the collection. I'm not going to click this button or I'm not going to process this because it takes, well, it'll probably crash out Revit with everything I have open right now. But with your Revit model, you can click on Go Live, and it gives you a little heads up and tells you anything that is incorrect or needs to be done to the model before you kick it out to Revit Live. So it's just telling me right now I haven't saved my changes, and it's just telling you here, verify visual style. So you're either going to get an X, which you have to address before you go live, or an info thing. Sometimes if you're missing material maps or if they're not mapped correctly on your computer, you'll get a little info thing that says, you're missing a map, so you have to then go and repath to that material. But you can still go live even if the materials are missing. It just renders out the material. If it's a diffuse map or color map, it would just render it out like a gray, standard material. But you can go into materials and fix them, which I actually had to do with this out of the box. I think there were 3 materials that I had to map to that weren't being seen. So I could show that, but we're running out of time. So go live. It runs this process. Basically, it uploads your model to the cloud. It processes it, and then it downloads it back to your local computer. So you can save these files for live on your computer. And the reason I didn't have live running during this whole presentation is that it is extremely taxing on your computer. So if you have multiple programs open, like I do, it's probably not a good idea to run live at the same time as you're running these other programs, because what Revit Live is, well, it says it's Autodesk Live here. It's kind of interchangeable. It's the same program. This is actually built on the background of 3ds Interactive, but it automates a lot of stuff that would otherwise be extremely time-consuming to do. So which one is it? I don't know. Got a few of these. Let's hope it's this one. So really what Live is it's an application, a viewer of your Revit model that has some stuff built in. This is built on top of a gaming engine, formerly called Stingray. Now it's called 3ds Interactive, but it packages this project up. So if you're a really advanced user, again, you have access to 3ds Interactive because it's part of the collection. You can open this project up directly in 3ds Interactive and start to enhance the scene. So you can create motion, put sound effects, do a bunch of different stuff. This is our live scene. So some people say, it's a real-time renderer, which technically it is because it's rendering on my computer. But don't get that confused with programs like Enscape, where if you make a change to your model and Enscape is running side by side with the project, that those updates are just going to happen instantly within the live environment. Every time you make a change to your Revit model, you have to process it as a new Revit Live model. So it's not a side-by-side program. But in here, I exported many different 3D views. Go up to that one that I did the panorama. And you can see here in the building, I can look around. You can change the style. So if you wanted to just show stuff in black and white, show the landscape in sight is green. Let's look out the window there. So you have some different styles that you can change in here. The people, so the RPC people that you put inside your projects, it detects where those people are, and it actually creates these little 3D people in their place, and you can even have them animated. So it's hard to see, but they are kind of swaying around a little bit, arms moving. You can change the way that those look. Some cool features about Revit Live. I'm going to wrap this up so we have time for questions, but you can change the time of the day, what date it is. So let's get to that close enough, July 21st. Change this stuff. If you're having a really hard time, you can change the settings, the graphic settings from appearance to performance. Doesn't look as good, a lot quicker to process and navigate. Another cool feature of Revit Live is you can get BIM information. So you can click on specific elements and report information while you're in this immersive environment. I should mention that with tap and go turned on, if I click on a specific point within the model, it just kind of navigates to that point. With a VR headset connected, and this is hiding, let's see, this is hiding it in the corner. Turn off my points of view. If I had an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive connected to my computer, it would not have the little no symbol over the VR, and you can click this button to go directly into VR. Using an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive, you can then teleport through the scene using the triggers on the controllers or the joysticks on the controllers, depending on what you're using. So instead of looking like a little mouse button with an X where you click, it's got a little arc to show you what you're pointing at. You pull the trigger, and it navigates to that point. So pretty cool stuff. Super quick way to get into VR if you do have the hardware and you have the computer that can handle that. But otherwise, you know, the other option for rendering in the cloud and stuff is a pretty good one. You are able to change some different settings in here. If I do go to nighttime, there's a setting in here that will automatically turn on your artificial lights. This model doesn't use photometric light, so the lighting's kind of chintzy, but pretty cool stuff for a really, really simple, you know, quick way to get into immersive experience if you don't have, you know, the people in-house that can build an entire project in Unity or in 3ds Interactive. Okay. So, all right, that was a lot to cover in a short amount of time. We've got a few minutes left, so I want to definitely answer questions if I can. I will go ahead and
sure. One moment while I end today's recording.